So apparently there's handguns outside of Glocks that are just as trustworthy and reliable to carry. Wow, who would have guessed it, right? Well, this right here is the M&P 2.0 compact version. Now, originally I had no plans of ever owning this pistol, but after watching Cali Cool Guns video, which for those that don't know, is also a California gun YouTuber who tests and reviews firearms similar to the content I make here, he did a video going over his 2.0 and how it officially has replaced his Glock 19, which had me curious because, look, I love my Glock 19. It was the first handgun I ever bought. I've put so many rounds through it that, God forbid I ever had to use it in a self-defense situation. I am really confident in my training and time spent with that gun to do so. But still, I figured, screw it, let's try something that isn't a Glock for once. Plus, that Turner's deal was a little too good to pass. Now, before I get into the pros and cons of training and carrying a 2.0, just a reminder that with these kinds of videos, a lot of what I say is personal and it comes down to my body type, how I carry, and this exact M&P 2.0. Because keep in mind, this is a California compliant model, which comes with specific safety features that make it legal to buy from an FFL, which you'll see later throughout the video, aren't as safe as California thinks they are. So without further ado, let's talk about the pros. Concealment. Now, I chose the compact version over the full size for a reason. I wanted something that I could actually carry on me day to day without too much printing. Now, I do usually carry with heavy duty tees, which help hide most of the printing. Pair that with a good holster I picked off Amazon for like 30 bucks for testing, which, don't get fooled, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on a holster for it to be good. I ended up spending a few extra bucks to get a clip, a claw, and a wedge, which this is my first time trying out a wedge, which is meant to angle the grip inward and cut down on printing, which I believe this setup did exactly what I wanted it to do. Next up, the back straps. So this specific 2.0 includes 4 different back straps so you can change out the shape, thickness, and the angle of the rear grip to get a more comfortable, consistent, and controllable hold. Now, I got what I call small to medium sized hands, so for me, the small back strap fit the best. It gave me the most natural hand position and cleanest trigger reach, which translated to better control and comfort over my weapon. Now, the trigger is honestly one of the most impressive parts about this gun. Out of the box, it's a clean looking trigger with a predictable break with very little mush, as well as a good reset to help faster follow-up shots. Now, it's not a custom flat face trigger or, a race trigger, but for a stock trigger, it's not bad. Definitely better than a stock Glock trigger for sure. Now, moving on to recoil. It's pretty manageable, which of course makes sense since this is a 9mm in a compact frame, but you still feel a quick little snap. But like every other handgun, there's gonna be recoil. But I'd say it's pretty easily controllable, especially with a solid two-handed grip and a firm stance. Now, last but not least for the pros, we have accuracy. Which, what can I say, is pretty solid. I was able to hit everywhere I aimed using the iron sights, which is worth mentioning since most of my other handguns I currently carry do run red dots, but with the iron sights I was still able to hit at 30 yards, no problem. But the real test is of course in a CCW situation under some sort of stress, which those distances tend to be 3 to 7 yards. Which did a perfect job of getting center mass hits as fast as possible under a bit of pressure. Now, they're obviously not the tightest grouping, which realistically, in a self-defense scenario where you're going to be under some sort of stress and have to react immediately, you're not going to have time for slow trigger pulls to get that tight grouping. Now, of course, no gun is perfect, and this one definitely has its share of cons, which, to be fair, some of them come down to personal preference, but I did run into at least one I'd consider pretty serious on this specific model. So first up, comfort. Even though this is technically a compact handgun, I did run into some discomfort with certain movements. For example, when bending over or kneeling down to tie my shoe, I definitely felt the gun digging into my body. Now, to be fair, that's kind of to be expected, normally because of the position and where the gun sits. But since this gun is a bit larger than my P365, which is my everyday carry, I noticed it a lot more. Now, when it came down to sitting, no issues there. I could sit perfectly fine while carrying without any sort of discomfort. And yeah, the grip texture is a bit of a double-edged sword. It's great for handling and keeping the gun planted into your hands, but when it came down to carrying, I started noticing after a few minutes the aggressive texture rubbing against my skin caused some mild irritation. Now, that's not a deal breaker because, of course, this could easily be fixed with some tactical tape. Now, last but not least, with this being a California compliant pistol, which in order to be sold by an FFL does have to come with a few features you normally don't see otherwise. An external safety, a lower chamber indicator, and a magazine disconnect. Now, I've made a video about the magazine disconnect and why I think it's a dangerous feature to have on any carry gun. So if you want a deeper dive on that, make sure to check that video out. Now, surprisingly, the issue has nothing to do with the magazine disconnect. It actually has to do with the external safety. Now, at first, I didn't think much of it. It felt like a 1911 safety where you can ride your thumb on. But because this gun doesn't have a hammer or the same safety logic as a 1911, I felt perfectly safe to carry it with a round in the chamber with no manual safety. Now, what happened is, twice while running some CCW drills, my thumb hit the external safety, disabling my gun from shooting. Now, this isn't my first time running a gun with an external safety. My P365 has one too, and not once have I ever came across this issue. So I figured it had to do with this specific safety on the 2.0, which you can clearly see sticks out quite a bit and doesn't take much effort to engage. Now, it only happened twice, and as much as I tried to make it happen again on purpose, I had no luck. But even with one random occurrence like that, it made me a bit questionable about carrying it. So knowing all that, would I carry the 2.0 as it sits? No. There's definitely a handful of small tweaks I'd do before that, things like some stippling near the thumb rest and definitely some tactical tape on that grip, which those are just some of the easy fixes. The two things actually holding me back are the magazine disconnect and, more importantly, the external safety. So until I remove the magazine disconnect and get rid of that external safety, I don't see myself carrying this anytime soon. Now, lastly, I do want to do a comparison video of my Glock 19 to see how they stack up, but right now it's obvious why that wouldn't be fair. My Glock 19 is already perfectly set up to my hands, so maybe once I get some work done on the 2.0, probably a new trigger, a slide cut, and a red dot, and whatever other things I decide it needs to fit and work perfectly in my hands, then of course I can film an update video on those upgrades and follow up with that side-by-side comparison of the 2.0 versus the Glock 19. So that's all I got to say. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe. Also, if you're interested in seeing some CCW drills, make sure to check out my Instagram at ShadowTheWicked. Also, if you want to get in contact with me, that's a great place. But other than that, hope you guys have a good weekend. Stay safe and God bless.